Shelley, are you able to hear me?
I am. Sorry, it took me forever to get to my mic.
Yay, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you, I think I,
It should be okay. Yeah,
let's turn off.
We ready? All right, it is 4 p.m. on October 16th, 2024, which means it's time for the Heritage Preservation Commission meeting. Trying out for a DJ. Let's start with a call to order. Oh, sorry, the roll call. I just did the call to order.
Okay. Emily Dale,
Present.
Abby Beckham,
Present.
Alicia Hayes is excused. Duffy Westheimer. Here. Shelley Day,
Present?
Amy Horn,
Present.
Bernadette Burcham.
Present.
Thank you.
So cheerful. All right, our land acknowledgement today will be read by Commissioner Buckham.
The Heritage Preservation Commission humbly acknowledges the ancestral homelands of this area's indigenous nations and original stewards. These lands, still inhabited by Native descendants, border mountains sacred to indigenous peoples. We honor them, their legacies, their traditions, and their continued contributions. We celebrate their past, present, and future generations who will forever know this place as home.
All right, we'll now move on to public comment. If there are any
Alicia Hayes joined.
Oh.
Mine.
Sorry.
amendment to the roll call.
Alicia Hayes,
Present.
Full house, nice. All right, so now we'll move on to public comment. If there are any members of the public who have a comment on an item not on the agenda, now would be your time to speak. All right, and now we will move on to the approval of minutes. Does anyone have any notes? Oh, and did you want to just mention that there's a slight change to how they're taking the minutes now, since all of these are being recorded anyway?
so they're not on this minutes. I think this has more of that interactive, but moving forward, we're gonna move more to just the motions that are made and kind of the count. Given that we are recording the streaming, that's how all of our boards and commissions are moving, that it's just really documenting that motion and then who made what vote to that motion.
Yes, Commissioner Westheimer.
A question for you, Michelle. Are those recordings then searchable by a keyword?
They are, yeah, there's, we have a searchable database that they're all being stored on, and it can be by date, it can be by keyword, it can, it's kind of very searchable, yeah. It just saves on some of that, some of the conversations we've had about what was said, and we're not doing it because of that, it's just what all the other boards and commissions have been doing. And so as we transition to the new person who'll be taking minutes, that's how we'll be instructing them to do so.
So I have another question that came
Okay.
up. So other boards that I'm on, we do change content if it was recorded, and then we just say that we're approving them with changes. But if I remember correctly, you were told that we can't do that here, that we have to change it in the next meeting, but that's kind of hard to trace.
So specifically what was happening is, so I don't know exactly which boards and commissions and if they're part of the city, but so for city, so if there's something that like it was written down incorrectly and you listen to the recording, it's like, oh yeah, they said that, that's not, so like what was written doesn't match what was actually said, that can be amended. But when you have an instance where someone from the public said something that was incorrect, and then you were, not you specifically, but then a board member is saying we need to change that, you can't go back and change what was said, but you can correct those minutes this is the direction we were given from the clerk's office, you can correct them by saying, we'd like to note that that's not accurate and this is accurate in the following month's minutes.
So when I think this through, if someone goes to find out information in terms of historic stuff, because that's what we do, I can understand the public misspeaking, or even us misspeaking. But if we don't somehow connect it to the following month's minutes, misinformation can be carried forward. And that's what I would, somehow either we got to figure out a way to connect them, or it seems like we should be able to correct the content after we meet, read what was written. Maybe that's moot now.
And that is, I mean, that is part of just having the motions, is then the person listens to the recording and hears exactly what was said.
Well, and Duffy too, if they're doing a search for like, percentage of housing in Flagstaff that's historic, in a historic district, and someone says it's 73%, and the next month you would say, hey, I just want to correct that, it's actually what, I don't know, I'm making up numbers, whatever percentages is. If they did a search for like percentage of housing, it would ding both sets of minutes or both recordings, so they would be connected through that search term, and you would be saying, hey, I'd like to correct something from last month, so you'd be tying it in through the word you're saying.
And it'd be in that, because it's going to be that, if I was looking for something and it was talked about 1 month, you would look to that next month for the minutes, and so you would still be putting it in those minutes that there's a correction. You just can't change that the person said what the person said, because the person said it, and that's what the minutes articulate. But the commission can say, that was said, but that's inaccurate. It was actually, I think in the instance, a good example that comes to my mind is the pre versus post-World War housing. And that, it was, someone did say pre-World War II housing, and we can't change that in the minutes, because they did say that. But you can say, that I believe that was post-World War, so it would be in those minutes.
So one answer is to correct each other if we misspeak.
If you
At
catch
real
it, yeah.
time. But then from what Emily's saying, it's searchable across dates.
Yeah, if you were to pull up, like, I think her thing, it was like, she was looking at a certain percentage of housing, and so if you looked at search keywords, it would pull it up every time that was mentioned. So I think what you were saying is if it was corrected, then that would come up in the key terms.
Yeah, I mean, I assume there's just some sort of database with all the commission meetings and things in it, and
It
people
is,
can.
but it's gonna mostly be by topic, like.
Yeah.
Like if there was an address on there, like, hey, I'm looking up 100 North San Francisco, then you would do that by search.
Yeah, so I just think like there's just a database and you can search it and it'll pull up anything that happened in any commission meeting based on transcripts and things like that. Which is then nice because if something we're doing gets brought up in another meeting, you can still find it across meetings without those. I mean, our minutes aren't connected to, city council or anything like that, but then they can still find them. So this is actually, I think, more efficient than what we've got going on here.
I hope so. We found that with our other boards and commissions that it is. And you don't have to just search, you can actually just search Historic Heritage Preservation Commission. You can actually narrow it down to like, I just want those agendas and those minutes, so.
Okay, thanks.
All right, so now that we are on one of the last sets of minutes that will be detailed like this, do we have any amendments? Any incorrect things recorded incorrectly?
Go
I did
crazy, it's
notice
your
that
last
it was
time.
heavily paraphrased.
Yes, but there will be there is the video of this online, so if people want the full discussion. I was like, that was like a 2-hour conversation we had about that one item. This is not everything that was said. Anything? All right, do we have a motion to approve?
I will make a motion to approve the minutes from the September 18th meeting.
I'll second that motion.
All right, we've got a motion from Commissioner Buckham and a second from Commissioner Bertram. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, thank you. think that was the longest approval of minutes we've had, but a productive one. All right, we'll now move on to public hearing items. 6A is a certificate of appropriateness for 104 East Route 66.
Could I request that we shuffle the agenda and go to 6B? The applicant for 6A hasn't joined the meeting yet, and I did ping them and say, "Hey, are you coming?" So I'd like to give them a couple minutes to see if they can make it.
All right, we will come back to 6A and move on to 6B, a certificate of appropriateness for 100 North San Francisco.
Great, hi. And I have a correction to this one on the agenda. I'm Sarah Dector, I'm the Comprehensive Planning Manager, and I am the acting HPO. The applicant in this item is not Carl Eberhard. I think that was accidentally carried forward from the previous application. Mr. James Cravens is both the applicant and the property owner in this case. So we'll correct that in the agenda part of the minutes when we get that back, because that is something we can go back and change. So this is a amendment to a certificate of occupancy that was provided in I think April of 2019, and then re-looked at again in September of 2021. The property owner actually had these marquees, which were part of the original application. I'll pull those up really quick so you can kind of see them. This is the Hotel Monte Vista at 100 North San Francisco. I'll pull up what the original ones looked like so you can see. But right here you'll see there's this large marquee with the glass paneling and the downspout. This is probably the best image to look at to get a sense of it. The property owner actually, and I'll let him come speak to this, had this marquee manufactured, and it is so heavy he's not been able to install it without significantly altering the building in a fashion that he would like to avoid. So this is an application to provide a different kind of marquee, which is included in a sign application, because the marquee he's proposing would also include a sign. I know this is sideways when it loads on the agenda, but this is a much smaller marquee. It does not include the glass paneling. The sign level of this has not yet been approved. I don't know if I think that planning still needs to do a full building signage calculation to know if this can or cannot include additional signage. But basically what we're asking the commission to look at today is this modification of the marquee style and appearance, and if that is an acceptable change from the approved certificate of appropriateness. And then if the signage is too big or can't be placed on it, that can be removed based on the full sign calculation for the property. But that's still under review by staff, but we would like to have at least a sense of if this marquee alteration meets the criteria for a certificate of appropriateness. So the staff recommended action is that that you approve this with the conditions that the sign meet all of the conditions of its sign permit, and that it acquire any necessary right-of-way permits from the city. Sometimes encroaching onto the right-of-way requires a review by our engineering staff, but we'd want to have your commission review before we send anything to engineering. Any questions?
Questions
Before I ask
from commission?
Yeah, I was just wondering if there was evidence of what a historic marquee looked like, if there was one?
I think the original application had some historic pictures, and I'm not sure they had marquees. This is over the door that most of the hotel guests enter, which if you walk along San Francisco right now, it looks like every other door to the building. So I think this is not a historic addition, which is why the level of modification required for the heavier marquee was not desirable. We just didn't know when it was a concept, and then it's in real life. I'll let him speak to if its condition and other things.
You can see that there were 2 holes by the ornament above the door that did hold the chains or rods that held the original or an earlier marquee. Those holes are still there.
Yeah, I don't know if it was much of a marquee or if it was lighting. Yeah, maybe we can call the property owner up to answer
He's
that.
right there.
Yeah. Any other questions for me before Mr. Cravens get a chance to answer?
So the only thing that's being modified is this marquee, nothing else about the design that we've approved
Not at this time.
Okay, and is this little sign here too, is that part of it?
That is a sign that would usually meet all the standards of the downtown overlay, and so that's the kind we would approve with a certificate of no effect.
Okay.
So I didn't include it in the motion here, mostly because we need to do the full property sign calculation before we would know if this is something that could go up as well.
Is there a reason that like a giant awning, like, is okay, but like a smaller thing needs a like, it's smaller than what they had originally proposed?
Yeah, I mean, awnings, this awning is very particular in its architectural in its style, and it was part of, what I would say is the replacement marquee was originally part of the certificate of appropriateness, right? So
Yeah.
we have to modify the certificate
Okay.
of appropriateness to approve it. A smaller freestanding sign, like the one shown on the later pages, is, and oh, I can rotate it, look at that, okay. This might help, so nobody's twisting their neck. This is the kind of thing that would be a no effect. And so if it's an addition, it doesn't need to be added. It's only because there was something approved here in the certificate of appropriateness that we're bringing it back to you.
Cool. Any other questions for Sarah?
And this new marquee will fit and be light enough and do what they need it to do compared to the old one, I'm assuming?
I believe so. I'd let the property owner speak to that.
Okay, thank you.
So I have a question. You were, and this one and the other one on on Santa Fe, you refer to the downtown overlay, but we don't get a link to the overlay. We got a summary, but I would like, I don't know. What does the overlay say about signs?
So, yeah, when we put a staff report together, we cut and paste word for word every relevant policy in the downtown overlay. So the purpose of that is so you don't have to flip back and forth, but if at any time anyone wants to reference the downtown overlay, when we get to miscellaneous items, I can pull up where it is on the website, but it is public facing and accessible and searchable on the city website.
Actually, I already had it, I was gonna do a to and from because Commissioner Westheimer did request that link. I didn't have it readily available, so I was gonna let everybody know that it's coming. I just wanted to let everybody know it was coming and why prior to sending it out.
Yeah, I would appreciate that because I can comment on it, but I don't know what it says in the downtown overlay or the design handbook that was created. So it's really hard to comment. And personally, I'd just like to see the whole document and pull out what I would like to know. And when I went to look for it on the website, which I did find it, but it still said Mark on there. And so I don't know, you never know with the internet if something's up to date or not. So it would be helpful for me, for staff to supply the latest versions of things so that we know they're right.
This is the latest version. We haven't modified the downtown overlay guidelines since 1997, I think.
Either way, it's
Yeah.
just an internet thing that is not certain.
Yep.
All right, any other questions? Commissioner Day, Commissioner Hayes, any questions for Sarah on this before we pull the property owner up?
Not from me.
I don't have any questions at this time.
All right, great. Yeah, if the property owner would like to add anything, and I'm sure we've got a couple questions.
Hello, I'm James Craven from the Hotel Monte Vista. And yeah, originally the building had a square canopy that was pretty much what the ones that I already had built looking like. There was two canopies, one on San Francisco, one on Aspen. But the ones that I had made that looked exactly like the old ones, they ended up weighing about 1,500 pounds. And, you know, late at night, any night of the week in the downtown, people, you know, are kind of full of mischief. And a lot of people walk up and down I sit on the bench sometimes, and these young college kids mostly, they like to, you know, they're young and strong. They like to jump up and grab anything that's sticking out from a building, whether it's a sign, post or whatever. And I'm just afraid that something, would really happen if they, they like doing pull-ups and stuff like that, so this canopy looks a lot like the old one. It's smaller and round, but it has the same design on the top of it. So I think this would serve us a lot better, The old one had glass on top of it. It was non-illuminated, and I think this one would look a lot nicer, and it would be a lot safer. It's a little higher, and it only weighs about 100 pounds, maybe even less than that. So it's black like the old canopies. I'm not sure what happened to the old canopies. They seem to have disappeared back in about the 1950s off the front of the building. You can see where somebody cut them off with a torch. But yeah, I'd like to restore what it looked like and create a sense of place with that canopy and the sign on the other side of the building. I wish it could be illuminated. The letters on the face of the sign, just 1 or 2 watts, less than 5 watts, if that's possible. I think it would make a better impression. In our downtown now, there's no more really retail. It's art galleries and restaurants and bars. So, I want to present a nice look to the downtown to keep people coming up from Phoenix. They're our main customers on the weekends. So that's pretty much it, really.
Questions for James? I have a question. What are you going to do with the canopy, the giant 1,500-pound ones that you ordered?
Who knows? Who knows? I'll try and find a use for that somewhere, but they're so big and heavy. I might have to just cut those up too. But it's okay as long as we eventually do get a canopy above the door. I think it'll be nice.
So Sarah, James mentioned wanting to maybe have this be illuminated. Is that something that would have to come back to us again then?
No, that's part of the planning
Okay.
review for the sign code. So if, right now, the first application didn't include any illumination information, and so if, mostly the HPC is reviewing design, and if lighting is included, it needs a full outdoor lighting assessment for the property because the sign lighting cannot contribute to it going over the amount of lumens required for dark skies.
Okay.
I do have a question. You seem to have chosen San Francisco as the main entrance, and I'm wondering why, because your parking is off of Aspen.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. When I sit in the rendezvous in the afternoons and people park in our parking lot and come in with their suitcases, they walk right by the Aspen door up to the corner of the hotel and either come in the rendezvous door, which is interesting, or they'll go into the San Francisco entrance. They completely miss the Aspen entrance. I don't know how, but So it's all about creating a sense of place, so making the entrance a little bit more prominent. And that's why I have the second sign here as well, which I guess that's not an issue today, just the canopy. But, either door is good to go in, I guess. I've been at the hotel now for 31 years, and I work on it every day, trying to keep it up or improve it or restore it and all that, and ever since I bought the hotel, I saw that picture where there used to be canopies, and I thought it would be a great idea to put them back. Unfortunately, it's taken about 30 years to do that. That's how busy we are down there, but we appreciate all the help from the city. Another project that I'd like to do pretty soon is to restore our neon sign up on the roof. It's a real old-fashioned neon sign, and every time it breaks, I have to climb up there myself and fix it. It's too expensive to call a sign company, and what I'd like to do is put that LED neon up there, which is a lot more energy efficient and safer. When you plug a vacuum in the wall, that's 110 volts. The sign up on the roof is 15,000. That's how much it takes to run a neon sign. So it's dangerous to climb up there, it's dangerous to work on the neon, and it's, very expensive. And it breaks all the time. I can fix it and it can be broken the next day, or it might last 3 or 4 months, but that's typically it. And I think that really creates a sense of place as well, to have that sign working, and you can see it from a long distance. So that's another project that I'd like to bring forth pretty soon.
All right, any other questions for James or Sarah on this item? Can I get a motion?
I would make a motion to,
Go ahead.
Oh. Commissioner Day, do you have a question, or were you going to make a motion?
No, I was gonna do the motion.
Okay, Commissioner Westheimer says, go ahead.
Okay. And before I do that, I just want to say thank you to Mr. Cravens for caring for that property for the last 30 years. But I will motion to approve the modification to the certificate of appropriateness with the conditions that the marquee sign meet all the conditions of its sign permit and acquires any necessary right-of-way permits.
All right, we have a motion from Commissioner Day. Do we have a second?
I'll second that
I'll
motion.
second that.
And so many seconds from Commissioner Hayes and Bertram and Horn. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, congratulations. We look forward to seeing it.
Okay, thank you. See you next time. Bye.
All right, Sarah, has the property owner of 104 East Route 66 appeared?
They have, it's not the property owner. I
Oh, okay.
expected
The
their
applicant. Oh,
contractor
okay.
to make it, but, occasionally this happens and something comes up and somebody doesn't make it. We still have the information to consider in your packet.
Okay. We have other items on the agenda. If they said they were going to come, we could,
I didn't get a response.
Okay.
So I think we can proceed with it as a hearing item, and if we have questions that you don't feel we can answer or condition, then we can continue it, of course.
all right, then we will go back to item 6A, the certificate of appropriateness for 104 East Route 66.
Great. So this is a property that is currently known as Lumberjack Pizza, but is a historic building on Route 66 in the downtown. It has, underneath its 1916 facade, which is what we're all most familiar with, there is a 1881 facade that's pushed back a little bit. So this is kind of an unusual one on the frontage of 66 because the building has kind of an overhang, and that's where there's that outdoor seating, and then it has this canopy that comes out into the right-of-way and is under a permit from the Arizona Department of Transportation. That canopy was hit by a drunk driver, which seems to be the theme of our last 2 HPC meetings, is drivers hitting historic stuff in Flagstaff and messing it up. And so that's where this property owner has come forward with a slightly modified design. If you look at, I'm going to pull up the street photo first. So the street photo kind of, I know you've got to zoom in quite a bit. It shows the current condition. This is a really simple constructed canopy. It really just has these 4 posts that are 4x4s. There's no specific date I can find of when this was constructed. It doesn't have a lot of historic features, but it doesn't have a lot of hardware or other things that would really date it either. So I'm just calling it of an undetermined date. There are historic photos of this property with no canopy, and so it is hard for me to tell when it came into being, if it's in the historic range of variability or not, but it's a pretty familiar part of our street frontage, and it does, if you look at this street frontage as a total, it does add variety to kind of what we're seeing there, which is what's remarkable about this part. So let's go back to what they have provided. So their plan submittal, you can see these are this is a really skinny little odd property too in the downtown, is to embed the posts below the sidewalk a little better and to have these, instead of 4
Can you zoom in?
posts- Yeah.
Sorry.
let me find a good way to zoom in. I know these are like, people forget how big these plans are. They're ginormous. But here's the best way to look at it. So instead of 4 posts, it would have these 2 posts with kind of some slight details, and this would now become a steel column. So more durable. It also, one of the benefits they mentioned of moving to the steel column, the 2 steel posts instead of the 4 wooden ones, is it actually will increase visibility on the sidewalk. There'll be fewer kind of obstacles on the sidewalk. That'll help with accessibility if you imagine somebody passing or maybe needing to move around with a scooter or bike or a wheelchair. This will make that a more maneuverable part of the sidewalk as well. They don't occupy the area under this canopy past their facade with any of their street furniture, so this is really a nice weather protection for the community as well. And otherwise, not a lot of changes. They're refreshing the sign a little bit too to give it a look, but we don't have a sign permit yet with this, so.
All right, questions from commission? I have a question. When was the accident and what exactly did it do to the facade? Like, do we have a picture? I haven't driven by there in a while,
I
so.
don't have that information.
Like, are all 4 posts still standing
The
or?
posts are still standing. I think it disconnected one at the
Okay.
top is what my impression is. When last time I walked by, I did look at it. I think if you were on the sidewalk, you wouldn't know, but I think it's impacted the structure and they would really like it replaced before the winter and it starts carrying a snow load. So it must have happened either last winter or since last winter.
Okay.
I know Mark started talking to the property owner about this in March. So it was at least before March when this occurred.
Okay, thank you.
I have a few questions. One is, why is there an ADOT? Why do you need to talk to ADOT, or why do they need to approve if it's on sidewalk?
The Arizona Department of Transportation owns that sidewalk, not the city. So any encroachments into it go, so like the encroachment at the Monte Vista comes to city engineering for our right-of-way encroachment permit. And this one, we can approve it, and then it has to go to the Arizona Department of Transportation for their encroachment permit.
So they own the sidewalks along Santa Fe, but not San Francisco or any of those?
Yeah, just 66 Santa Fe, yes.
Okay. Another question I have about that stucco above, is it known what's behind it? I mean, is there a different material behind it that would be more associated with the past?
No, there is not. The actual stone facade is about 5 feet back, if that makes sense. So there, where you see the windows, that's where the original facade is. That entire other piece on that kind of looks like a second story with windows is actually a 1916 addition that brought the building forward to where everyone else was lined up on the street.
So they made it stucco in 1916?
Yeah, it's been stucco. I don't think there's, the previous, I thought we had some photos maybe. There was one. In the plan, was it in the plan submittal? Trying to remember. I think it was in the plan submittal. Oh. Maybe I put it in the staff report. Give me just a second to look. That's my understanding of the building. Yeah, you can see there's still these stone pillars.
Can you zoom again?
Right here. This is the building. Or no, this is the adjacent building. This is the building in its original frontage location. And you can see it just had an awning. And everything you see at the street level is an addition that brought it up to here with the Flagstaff grocery. So I don't have a picture of what year this looked like and why. But this is the location of the original facade. It's way back there. You can't just strip the stucco and find something cool underneath, is my understanding.
Then my other comment is the steel columns. If you look at the Weatherford steel columns, there is rust. So I would suggest that they talk to the Weatherford and learn from their experience before they invest like that and have the same kind of problem, especially along 66 Santa Fe with more probably salt and things being used.
Would you like to you could make that a condition of approval, is that they ensure that it will have longevity and not be susceptible to corrosion.
All right, other questions from commission? Duffy, would you like to make the motion then, so you can add the condition number 3? Just read exactly what it says under recommended action and then add a 3 with what you said.
So I will move,
But it's so tiny.
okay, I will move that they can go ahead with replacing the posts and going down to 2.
It's big again.
Okay, I'll approve a certificate of appropriateness for 104 East Route 66 with the conditions that 1, stone masonry work conform with the U.S. Secretary of the Interior standards and guidelines. 2, the canopy work be approved by the Arizona Department of Transportation and meet the building code requirements. And 3, that they research carefully how to do the steel posts so they can avoid corrosion and rust.
Great, we have a motion from Commissioner Westheimer. Do we have a second?
I will second that motion.
And a second from Commissioner Buckham. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. And great catch, Duffy. I hadn't thought about the salt. All right, that concludes our public hearing items. We will now move on to general business with 7A, a presentation on the certified local government program. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Let me just get out my thumb drive here so I don't forget. Okay, thank you, Chair Dale and members of the commission. My name's Ariana Urban. I am the Certified Local Government Coordinator and Planner for the State Historic Preservation Office. I am so happy to be here in your really cool city hall. I'd love to see a cut timber floor like that. You don't see those every day, so I was delighted to get to be here, and want to say thank you to Sarah and the city for inviting me. I can't do two things at the same time. Okay, there we go. I just have a pretty high-level overview. Sarah asked me to just speak about what the State Historic Preservation Office is and what kind of programs we have and how we can support you, because as a certified local government, it's literally my job to come here and help you with whatever you guys need. So I know we're a little bit being conscious of time, but I would love to just get an idea of you guys and who you are. If you want to introduce yourselves and say something short about how you came to historic preservation, I would really appreciate it.
So 30-second introductions. I'm Emily Dale. I'm a historical archaeologist. I teach at NAU, and I got the call that people were needed on the commission, so here I am.
I'm Shelley Day, online here, and I own and reside in a historic home in the downtown area.
Wonderful. Commissioner Hayes?
Hi, I'm Alicia Hayes. I work for the Park Service and I do Section 106 for federal agencies. So I was interested in learning about historic preservation with a city. And so saw the announcement and joined.
Hi, I'm Bernadette Burcham. I'm a registered nurse here in Flagstaff, but my first degree I got was in history.
Awesome.
And I absolutely love history. And I love history of Flagstaff. So when I saw an opening, I applied. So I'm very excited to be here.
Hi, I'm Amy Horn. I also work for the Park Service. I'm an archaeologist by training, but now work with different cultural resources in the Park Service. And I've been in Flag in Northern Arizona for about 30 years. So when I saw the opening, I was really excited to, like Alicia, to learn on the city level and just get involved in my community more.
Fantastic.
Duffy Westheimer, boy, I could say a lot, but anyway, I did take a historic preservation class in graduate school, and so I have a broad background in all sorts of things that support doing historic preservation, and run the Townside Community Land Trust where we preserve historic houses. So I've been finishing our 6th house, and I live in a historic post-World War II house.
I'm Abby Buckham. I'm a public historian, so I also studied historic preservation in college, did grad school here in Flagstaff, studied the South Side neighborhood. I did an internship with Mark, our old HPO, and yeah, I just really liked it, so I'm glad to be here.
Great job, everybody. That was the most actual 30 seconds of.
Thank you. I appreciate it. You guys sound really impressive. It's neat to have professionals from all kinds of adjacent fields to historic preservation. So I was a history major as well, so I understand where it comes from and how deep it goes. I have a Master of Science in Historic Preservation from the Architecture School at the University of Oregon. And after some time in the private sector, I came back home to Phoenix, and actually I was hired at the city of Mesa to be their historic preservation officer. And I did that for 2 years and got a trial by fire planning education, which was wonderful and has served me a lot in my position now at SHPO as the CLG planner. And I get to drive all around Arizona, which is like my dream job. I really have it. So I love training commissions, so I'm really glad to be here, and I'll give you some ideas of what we do. This is the Abbey in downtown Phoenix. It's one of our more successful historic preservation projects. That's former Phoenix Mayor Terry Goddard. He was also the Attorney General who saved this building, and it was a ruin, and now it's a really cool venue, and it just opened a couple months ago. So if you're ever in Phoenix, I highly recommend getting to the Abbey. So SHPO stands for State Historic Preservation Office, and it's also an officer. It's a person and a place. So Catherine Leonard is our SHPO. She guides our entire office on all matters of historic preservation in Arizona. Our office does a lot of things. We're pretty heavy on archaeology, as I'm sure you guys know. And we do lots of consultation on federal and state undertakings. We, of course, administer the National Register of Historic Places and all kinds of other historic preservation programs. And we try and do as much advocacy as we can, because we know in Arizona it is not easy to do historic preservation. A lot of other places have, institutionalized culture and systemic, systems in place to do historic preservation, and Arizona is one of those places where we just can feel like a little bit like Sisyphus pushing up a boulder sometimes. But our office is funded by the Historic Preservation Fund. The federal government gives us that money, and we are not funded by any taxpayers or by the state of Arizona at all. And so, if you have any friends in the legislature. We are severely understaffed. We only have 5 archaeologists to deal with the entirety of the public lands in Arizona, which is insane. But we love it. So our founding legislation for SHPO and all the SHPOs across America is the National Historic Preservation Act. Lyndon Johnson signed it in 1966, and it really created the structure that we have today for historic preservation. So it nestled HP within the Department of the Interior, more specifically the National Park Service, of course, and it created all the things that we know of today: the SHPOs, the National Register, of course, Section 106, And most importantly to me and you, the Certified Local Government Program. And that was an amendment in 1980. And you'll see some pictures of our staff throughout this presentation. Catherine likes faces for us to get familiar with, so we put them in there. Okay, so I am not an archaeologist, unlike most of you guys. I am not a compliance expert by any means, but of course we spend a lot of time doing compliance, and Section 106 is a massive part of our jobs at SHPO. Interestingly, 75% of compliance projects come from just these 10 little agencies. So, you know, we've got expert archaeologists. They're wonderful. Dave Zimmerman lives here in Flagstaff, so we've got a little bit of a local presence. And we just do an amazing amount of compliance projects. This number is outdated, about 2,700 in 2022. The National Register of Historic Places is another one of our showcase programs, of course. We call it the nation's official listing of prehistoric and historic places worthy of preservation. But we know the National Register means a lot of things, and it also doesn't mean a lot of things, right? Being on the National Register is really important, and it's a great honor, and you get a plaque, and that is great. But we also know that National Register designation all on its own does not protect a building. You can get on the National Register, demolish your building the next day. So that's where a lot of misinformation comes in about historic preservation. I'm literally preaching to the choir, but for anyone who's out there, I just like to repeat it wherever I can. This is kind of where people start to look at historic preservation as a threat and a bad word, and as being anti-change and anti-progress. And it's just so not true. Of course we know historic preservation is not true. The National Register of Historic Places, local historic preservation programs, none of us are trying to preserve something in ice, in amber at this point. We know that that's not practical, it's not the best way to keep buildings in use, and it's not good for communities to just never change, right? We know that change is inevitable, change is always coming, and how I've really started to conceptualize all of this is that historic preservation is not about historic preservation, it's about managing change. And just taking those changes that we know are coming and informing the choices made in order to be able to best preserve historic integrity, but also character and culture and placemaking our applicant talked about. You know, people come to Flagstaff because of the historic downtown of Flagstaff, because of Route 66, and little by little, you know, as these buildings, maybe, you know, one gets demolished, another gets demolished, it's not the end of the world, but in a decade, we might not have as much historic character in Flagstaff or Winslow or Williams, where I was the past couple weeks. And slowly people start to recognize that. So people love living in Flagstaff because it's Flagstaff. We want to keep it Flagstaffy. And a lot of that has to do with historic resources. I don't know if you guys know about our site steward program. I'm sure some of you do. It's really cool, and this is not a state mandated program. This is literally just like a cool thing. This is not a legislative program, but we have 430-ish active site stewards right now, which are just volunteers that literally volunteer their time and their gas to drive around and monitor archaeological sites all across Arizona. It's a massive program. I think we have the biggest one in the US, and it's a big deal. You have to get trained and certified to do this, and the Site Steward program has done a lot of good over the past, many, many years at this point, 1987. So we, of course, work with tribes. It's not something that I personally have done a lot of, but a huge part of our office, of course, is working with our federally recognized tribes, making sure we stay engaged and understanding of the things that they need. CLGs, yay, this is my stuff. The Certified Local Government Program, we have 30 in Arizona right now. And we have also like 11 or 12 in the works, which is crazy. And I'll show you the next slide. But being a CLG is awesome, and you get a lot of really cool stuff from it. But being a CLG is really that municipal commitment to historic preservation, and it's a big job, because the biggest part, do I have these slides in here? No. The biggest part of being a CLG is enacting your historic preservation ordinance, and that is a massive amount of work to do a text amendment, to write an entirely new section of a zoning ordinance. So I always give kudos to the folks who did that, because it should be recognized. And let's see, are there any marquees in this picture? Hotel Monte Vista? Yeah. Do you see them? Right there. I think that's a marquee, like a little tiny. That's so funny. I just happened to put this picture in this slideshow. Yes, I can. Here we
Does that
go.
mean we need to put the flags back on the building too?
I think those flags used to get strung, like there's wires between the buildings, like they did them
Cool.
across.
It's neat. It's kind of gothic-y, isn't it?
Yeah, you can
Yeah, there is a little, it's darker.
Just little,
There's something there.
Uh-huh. It's definitely casting a shadow. Oh, we're doing historic preservation in real time, you guys. This is great. Yeah. That's what's so fun about preservation is you never know what you're gonna find. But where was I now? Oh yeah, so we make that municipal commitment to historic preservation, and it has to come from the people, and it needs to come from the city staff, and it has to go all the way to the mayor. The mayor literally signs the CLG agreement. So we like to encourage CLGs as much as we can. Not every single place is going to be good for a CLG, but. And I love this slide because it shows you the actual, like, real diversity of certified local governments we have all across Arizona. And it overwhelms me sometimes because I get to visit all these places, but everyone gets to visit all these places and really experience how wonderful and how historic they are. You might be wondering, is Oro Valley historic? The answer is not really, but they have one historic ranch within their municipality, and so they recognize that it's important. And they applied to be a CLG, and now we can give them some funding in order to study it and to help bring it back into use. So you don't have to have a ton of historic resources. You don't have to be Clifton or Bisbee, but your city needs to be on board. And so it's really exciting too, because you see the last one we did was Cottonwood, so about 10 years ago. So it's exciting to be welcoming new CLGs, and also just to know that historic preservation is being recognized all across Arizona in places you might not think of as a real tool for tourism and for economic development and for housing and for all these things that we know keep our cities flourishing. So we'll talk a little bit about Flagstaff. I did a little deep dive on the Arizona Memory Project, and the library has actually put up a lot of the documents from the early Flagstaff historic preservation years, and it was really fun to to go through them. Of course, a public historian. And the earliest mention of the Flagstaff Historic Sites Commission, which was what this used to be called, was 1979, which is crazy because I think it might be the oldest one in the state. Like Tucson, yeah, I know. Tucson, Pima County, we don't use superlatives, of course, we know that, but like Tucson, Pima County, I think might have been the same year, maybe 1978, but you know, to see how many years early, quote unquote, Flagstaff was starting to do this is really significant. You know, in the 70s, we were on the tails of urban renewal. We were not preserving historic resources. We were trying to tear them down in a lot of ways because they were blighted and unsightly. But Flagstaff said, no, we have all of these incredible buildings. At the time, they were just really looking at buildings. So they started with a survey, 1979, 80, 83, and it went on from there. So the Design Preservation Manual, this is the first one anyway, and it's really unusual to see a city doing historic preservation of their own volition and accord in the 70s and 80s. So good job, Flagstaff. I just wanted to also talk about what you guys are now the Heritage Preservation Committee, which is great. I don't think anyone else has the word heritage in their name as opposed to historic and preservation, so good job, Flagstaff, one more time. And this is right on the website, and I just was perusing the Flagstaff Heritage Preservation website and saw the enacting authority for the commission. I'm sorry, for the Heritage Preservation Commission. Did I get this wrong? Okay, sorry. But it's great. You guys have a lot of work to do and a lot of really fun stuff and a lot of opportunities. Sometimes it's fun, sometimes it's less fun, I know that. But, alongside recommending city council designate properties and landmarks, increase public awareness and the value of historic preservation. You guys are like the ambassadors, essentially, and the experts in the community, and you speak for the community and formally get to speak for the community on issues of historic preservation. On top of course, advising owners of landmarks and structures on the physical and financial aspects of preservation. Of course, reviewing and making decisions on certificate of appropriateness and adopting design guidelines. So this is a really comprehensive set of bylaws you guys have here, and I would encourage you to refer back to it when you start to feel, I can't tell you how to feel, but being a commissioner is really hard work, and it can be thankless in a lot of ways. And so, you do this entirely of your own, love for historic preservation. You're not compensated. You could be with your families right now, right? And I just like to pander to commissioners every time I get the chance to, because I want to say thank you. On behalf of SHPO, seriously, thank you for doing this, because we can't do historic preservation without you, so. The other cool part about being a CLG, and this is arguably the best part about being a CLG, is that we can give you money. And there's about $20,000 each year per CLG, and we give out around 5 of them every year. And we're actually required per the federal government to pass through 10% of our allocation to the CLGs. And we love doing that, and we often don't get as many applications for projects as we'd like. So there is a 40% matching requirement. It can be done in staff time or volunteer time, so it doesn't have to be a cash match. And unfortunately, this is only for preservation planning projects and not for bricks and mortar projects. So all the stuff here could have been done with CLG money, a new National Register nomination, or new design guidelines, even a text amendment if you needed to do one, and a new preservation manual, a new overlay, any planning thing that you might not have the capacity for. We can help out by providing some funds to hire a consultant. So I wish I could give out some bricks and mortar money. That's honestly the most need right now, but I'm working on it. One of the other programs that we have at SHPO that I also run is the Historic Property Tax Program, and the most popular program is for residents, for residential properties that are not income producing, so rentals and Airbnbs are not allowed in this program. But if your house is on the National Register and you occupy it, you can be eligible for a 50% reduction in your property taxes, which not everyone knows about, clearly, because there's only 51 properties enrolled in the program in Flagstaff. And I looked through our database, and I think there's about 250 that might be eligible. I don't know exactly how many of them are rentals, but there are 300 residential properties on the National Register in Flagstaff. So this is a good thing to get the word out. I run this program, so you can send anyone to me. The application's super simple. You do, however, agree to have any modifications you make to your house reviewed by the State Historic Preservation Office. So it's not a total freebie, and it's not quite like a certificate of appropriateness. It's more of a property owners come to me, and very rarely do they want to make substantial changes, but can I replace my shingles or my porch posts or something like that?
Ariana, can we talk after the meeting?
Yes. Another project, and I'm sorry, another program that we have deals with historic income tax credits, which are different from the residential property tax program. And this is actually a joint program between SHPO and the Park Service and the IRS. And you actually, if one has a historic commercial building that's going to be income producing, and it needs a substantial amount of work, you can take those rehabilitation costs, and I don't exactly know the intricacies of this program, but those rehabilitation costs can be calculated against a rebate to your income taxes for the following 5 years. So this program is usually best applicable to big projects, large hotels and things like that, because the scope needs to be big enough in order to be able to make the project worth it. This is a very lengthy and complicated, but can be very lucrative. And I would love to have better news about the Heritage Fund, but unfortunately I don't. So the Arizona Heritage Fund was originally a program funded by the lottery back in the 90s and the 2000s. And it was discontinued in 2008 due to the recession. But back then we were getting about $10 million a year for literally just to distribute to government and nonprofit preservation projects. And this is where we can fund bricks and mortar stuff. So literally, like Jerome Town Hall needs a new roof. This is how we would have gotten it for them. It was reenacted in 2021, which was very exciting, but it was funded year to year. We did not get a permanent allocation from the legislature. And so we had a couple really good years, $1.5 million. This past year we had $1.8 million and 14 projects. It was huge. For 25, of course, the state of Arizona is in a $2 billion budget deficit, and it was swept from the budget. So again, how many friends in the legislature? The Heritage Fund is the only way that we can assist property owners to help fix their buildings. We don't have any other money. So cross your fingers for the future. And we also have a conference, and please come to the conference. Please, please, please come. This was our conference in Yuma in 2022, and it's a blast, and it's really worth it, and we have programming for archaeology and for historic preservationists, but most importantly, again, a little biased, most importantly, we have training for commissioners, for CLG commissioners. I do a half-day workshop on the day before the training starts, and every single commissioner is invited across the whole state of Arizona, and last year we got about 70 people, which was overwhelming. I was not prepared for 70 people, but it's really fun, especially if you're a new commissioner and sort of haven't been through the cycle of a whole year yet. I always encourage commissioners to come. Staff is also, it really is a training for staff and commissioners, and I try to change it up every year, but I go over a lot of historic preservation basics, and what it means to be a CLG and run a commission, and we do some design review training, hopefully this year. And I think that's the last slide. So to piggyback, also, I believe for next year, we should still have funding for commissioners to come to the conference. If you're able to commit to coming to the training the day before the conference, we can actually sponsor your registration for the whole 3 days. Yeah. So I really recommend it. We should be in Phoenix next year. We were in Prescott last year, so this year. But I'll piggyback on that. Like I said, it's my job to come do trainings. And so this was, an intro. I wouldn't even call it a training. But if you have any, if you can think of any needs that you guys might have in terms of something you'd like to learn more about or really get trained up on, I do a big design review training that I can come and work through with you guys. I can come and do a workshop or a study session or a retreat, or just come back to another meeting and do another 30 minutes or something like that. So please just let me know. Ask Sarah can let me know. And I'd be happy to figure out what it exactly is you need and make a special presentation for it. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ariana. All right, any questions from commission for?
I
Oh,
have a
yes, Alicia.
question, or a couple questions. All of that training, it sounded really interesting, and I've been going to the annual preservation conferences, but a lot of times the workshops that are held at the same time are things that are really related to my work. And so I have never been able to go to the CLG training, and I really would like to get that training. Is there another time that it's held outside of the conference, or can we ask if you would do one in Northern Arizona? I would really like to see it from that perspective because, like I had said originally, my background is in federal agencies, and it's very different from the stuff that I see come before us, before the commission, than what I do all day long in Section 106 for a federal agency. It's very different.
Yeah, Chair Dale and Commissioner Hayes. I've been toying with the idea of doing regional trainings, but I've been finding that it is most effective to just come back to whatever CLG needs the training and do a personal one, because that way I'm able to get the information exactly what you guys need. We have plenty of time for questions and discussion, and I get to go to more cities. So. Yeah, just all you have to do is ask. Just let me know when, and I'll be here.
Well, I, for one, would love to see a training in Flagstaff.
Me too.
Yeah, I agree. I would as well.
If we can come up with a date where all of you are available for 4 hours, I'm sure we can also get some staff there to kind of fill a room of 10 or 12. We certainly book one of the conference rooms at City Hall, but maybe that's something we can open calendars and look at. I hate to make Ariana come up here during the snowy season, which we know is about to start on Friday. So maybe we could look at a date in the spring.
Our agendas tend to be a lot shorter during the summer, so if there is a date when we just cancel because we don't typically a June or July, we just don't have a meeting because there's not enough, but we could replace that with that.
Yeah, sometimes May too is a good month. We're slow, so just let me know. Do you know when the conference is going to be this year? I know last year one of the issues was that the conference was in October and then it was again in June, so it was actually not a full year.
It was
so
in the same fiscal year, yeah.
Yeah, we couldn't send people twice in the same fiscal year because we'd already spent the money sending the HPO to the first one, and then we didn't get a chance to do the second one too. So is it gonna kind of stay in the fall or the spring? Where's the timing of it?
As of now, it's gonna be probably the late spring, unfortunately. I wish it was gonna be a little earlier, but I think we're looking at May, perhaps towards the middle of May. So, and we also have registration sponsorships for staff as well. So the conference planning has been a little rocky this year, but we're shooting for May. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I have a question that, are commission members able to contact SHPO to discuss things and figure out a better understanding of options or figure out what's going on? Can we do that individually, or can we even ask someone from SHPO to chime in at a meeting?
Yeah, Chair Dale and Commissioner Westheimer, yes, I get emails from commissioners fairly often, from chairs especially, with questions, and it's, my role is advisory, and I'm not able to exactly always tell you what you should and shouldn't do, but I can give you information, and I do also, part of my job is to weigh in on cases and projects that might be tricky or complicated, and another set of eyes might be helpful. So I'm available for that. It depends on how you guys want to structure it.
And I will say that you all know that I am not an architect, and I'm more of a policy level planner. So as long as I'm acting, whenever there's like a more serious architectural question that can't be answered readily by the online information from the National Park Service, like happened a few weeks ago. We had with the project that's going on at the visitor center, I am always reaching out to Ariana ahead of those and getting her advice, whether it's just informal advice is usually what I'd say. But it definitely, like her and Susan Lawson are usually quick to answer. So like for instance, there was a question about replacing hardware on the door at the train station. I don't know anything about hardware mechanics. I'm not going to try and answer that off the top of my head.
I wrote a paper about historic hardware.
Yeah, see? So Ariana wrote a paper about historic hardware, so I clearly give them a call, even if I don't always call it out. They're in touch about many of the things that we are working on, unless it's clearly like the code says this. They're not the experts in our code. They are the experts in the national standards and the programming at the state and national level. So we certainly want to make sure that we are always in touch with them for those kinds of things. And if you have a question that you want to ask her too, you can ask me to send it on if there's enough time, or you can just copy the HPO and Michelle hopefully on the question so that we all walk into a meeting with the same information too.
Yeah, we sometimes also, at the request of the city, will chime in at a meeting and can do a supplemental presentation about whether this potential project meets the Secretary of the Interior standards or whether it doesn't. We did that in Prescott last year. They were trying to build, a developer was trying to build a pretty tall building on Whiskey Row, right in front of the courthouse. And so we prepared a presentation for their Historic Preservation Commission on the day they were deliberating the project and talked about how it didn't meet the Secretary of the Interior standards. And that was a high-profile project. It was a packed house. So in situations like that, we can also provide our input.
Could we get a copy of these slides? They're not linked to the agenda. That way we'll have, it's got the staff and contact information. That would be helpful.
Definitely. I just finished this presentation today, so unfortunately, it did not get into the packet, but I have cards. I can give you all my card as well.
I have another question. So we had recently something that was it was a difficult call on whether it was appropriate, and it had to do with an addition to a historic house. And it didn't pass the first meeting in July, and it was on the agenda again in August. And it was a real hard thing to really look at the Secretary of the Interior standards in relation and applying to that house, because I don't always know all the nuances. My background is archaeology, and I think a lot of us on the commission are archaeologists by trade. And there isn't a historical architect on there in a situation like that. And if we had a difficulty coming to a decision on whether or not to approve a certificate of appropriateness, could we ask for the historical architect from the SHPO to weigh in on the project, or ask them for advice? Would that be appropriate?
Yeah, Chair Dale and Commissioner Hayes. Yeah, yes, I do that fairly often. I get asked to provide an opinion on certificate of appropriateness projects, whether they're appropriate or not appropriate. I'd be happy to do that. And also happy, to come and do design review training with you guys so we can practice, understanding and spotting what are good additions and modifications and which ones are less good.
Well, I would love to be in that training, because like I said, my background is archaeology, and I see all of these historic, have to do with buildings come up, and it's just not my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
In my day job, I would just call the SHPO. So I'm just wondering if we can do that. Call a friend, ask for help.
That's what we're here for. It's literally my job to help you.
All right, other questions for Ariana? All right, we'll let her get home.
I hate to leave Flagstaff, but okay.
But thank you so much, and we look forward to hearing more from you in the future.
Thank you.
All right, we will now move on to this month's update on the Historic Signs and Facades Grant tracking.
Hi. This is your monthly update, which was part of your packet. Some grants have been paid out since we last spoke. We did finish paying out 314 West Birch and 314 North Mogollon. Both of those are completed. I have to give a shout out to Annalisa Hansen, who's the new admin assistant for economic vitality and helping us with BBB funding. She has followed up with a few of the grantees. We have not heard back from 3 East Aspen, and we are continuing to follow up with that property owner. 601 West Cherry has informed us that their contractor is not able to schedule them until late spring 2025. So they are likely, given that they are expecting that given that they have their grant expiring in April 2025, that they will need an extension. We also are expecting receipts very shortly for 1625 North Sunset and for 416 South San Francisco Street. And then also I'll let you know that even since the last meeting, Caitlin Kelly at 823 West Birch, who you approved a grant for in September, has already been in touch and working on her building permits. 614 West Santa Fe and the Sago Lily House both have permits submitted, and so the only one outstanding with no works or permits submitted yet are 3 East Aspen, 601 West Cherry, and 803.5 West Aspen, which again, you only approved last month. So we're making some progress on all of these. We did not have any grant applications this month. Our available balance at this point is $15,000. I do expect one more application. There's someone working on an application who didn't get it in this month, but will probably in November for the Schweitzer building on North San Francisco Street, which is looking at some window issues with their building. So we're working on one more. I think nobody else has been in touch about grants, but that very likely means we will have fully funded our allocation by next month, which means we will not accept grant applications again until late March. And there are a few people who've reached out who are not ready to apply this fall, but may apply in March as well. So if you have any feedback on that or want me to follow up in any other way, this will be what the report is like from now on, is just some verbals on who we followed up with. We're not going to follow up with everyone every month. We're going to try and make sure that at least quarterly we're making a call and making sure people are on track.
So I was looking at this, and it would be helpful to understand or make consistent the status of them, because different language is used. As an example, Sago Lily, I thought I submitted everything, but it just says something about permits submitted and receipts, but all that work's done. So
You haven't gotten a check yet though, right? So it's not paid out, we're just working through your receipts right now.
yeah, so that's the other part of my question. Is there like a schedule? Do you do the checks monthly, quarterly? How is that done?
Oh gosh, that is a great question. I mean, getting a check cut within the city goes through several like triplicate auditing processes. It is not a quick process. We also have to go through and verify all the parts of the receipts. So the way when receipts come in, what happens is me and Annalisa go through them. We decide, make sure everything is actually, compensable that's submitted. So like for instance, there's been one recently submitted me like a Home Depot receipt that included tools for their job. So we don't reimburse for tools. So I have to take that out of their calculation. And then they gave me other receipts that covered other pieces of it. So often we're working back and forth with property owners. I don't know where we are exactly on the Sago Lily one. I can follow up with Annalisa this week. But that process is, when we've completed that process, and me and Annalisa are both satisfied we have the right amount and that we know what amount to write the check for, we then have to create a requisition, and then a voucher is created, and then someone in finance has to cut the check and then mail it or get it picked up. So it is not an EFT. It is not fast, and it has to be done on the timeline that our accounting systems allow. So we try and work quickly through it, but everybody's very busy, and I think we've also had, unfortunately, some illnesses and injuries the last few weeks. So we're trying to get caught up on them. But at least we've gotten calls out to some of the people we were uncertain on and weren't hearing from them in terms of progress. And I'm always watching in Enterprise if they have submitted through community development. There's a building safety review that happens when people put in commercial building permits or residential building permits. That gets flagged for me, and I look at that, and then I update the spreadsheet. So Annalisa is going to take on the role, though, of following up with people who either put in their permits long ago, we're not sure if work's been completed, at least until we get some more staff, until we get our staff position filled, and then that'll be a role we'll ask the HPO to do at least quarterly with every applicant.
I would just like to reiterate my interest in seeing the after of these projects. So even if there's just a picture of what they look like now, be cool.
Sure.
I'm happy to offer a tour of Sago Lily. She's almost done. So, yeah, you're all welcome to come. I'm happy to walk you down after a meeting, and I have a key.
Yeah, we could agendize a field trip. That's much like when we have seasonal gatherings or things, we can put at the end of the agenda, the commission will adjourn to visit da-da-da site and look at it. That gets harder in the winter because it's starting to get dark at the end of our meetings, or we could put them at the beginning if you would like us to, but that is something we can add and advertise as a quorum.
Cool. All right, any other comments on this item? All right, any important things from the approvals, Sarah?
The foundation repair at 803 and a half West Aspen has been approved. The building permit portion has been approved. And then the sign at 24 West Route 66, which is the RE/MAX building. It's been a lot of different things, like a Jimmy John's and things. It's not a historic structure. It was constructed in the 80s, but they do fall within the downtown overlay, and they're just getting a new sign facing Route 66. Basically a wooden sign with a halo lighting. So pretty simple things this month on the reports. Nothing as fancy as last month.
Great. Any miscellaneous items? Do we start with staff?
Yep, so I'll just let you know, I will be sending out a link to the, sorry, it's evening and my brain is totally fried, but to the historic district link that Commissioner Westheimer asked for, and it is the most current link, so in addition to finding it online. And then something that Chair Dale and I talked about is an update on the HPO position, and so I'll just start it off, and Sarah, you can fill in, but we continue to interview applicants. We interviewed about 5, and we did not select a candidate. Just a reminder, this is a shared position as a Heritage Preservation Officer and Senior Planner, so looking for someone that can fill both roles. We also continue to ask every budget cycle to separate out those positions so that we have just a Senior Planner and just a Historic Preservation Officer. We will continue to do that. Please continue to talk to your local council people about the importance of that and it being its own role. And then we're just going to continue to interview applicants. We have 2 more that have been shortlisted. And my request to you all is if you have anybody in your networks that could fill that position, as the hybrid position, please send them our way. Thanks.
Anything you wanted to add to that, Sarah?
Nope, that's pretty much it. I've left that position open until filled. And so we can accept applications whenever, essentially, and we'll keep going through them on a regular basis. Michelle helped me out with that this last month. And we're just gonna continue to interview until we find the right candidate.
Great. All right, items from commission?
So I have given some thought as to why that item at 15 North Park was so difficult. And one thing I've noticed, well, there are a couple reasons I think so, but in the URL for the townsite overlay, it says only guidelines. It doesn't say standards. So it says, you know, document center /views/10944/townsite district design guidelines final, but there are standards in there. And it's almost more important in my mind. You know, not everyone looks at that, but I think we just need to reiterate to the development professionals that there are standards in that document, not just guidelines. And so then I was thinking about how, for example, that person, I looked it up, purchased that property 10 years after the overlay went in. So did he not know there was an overlay? Because it had been there for 10 years. So do the real estate agents and the architects and things not know about the overlay? And so that creates a potential result of conflict. Because no one wants the conflict. It was really difficult. And there are standards in there, and it was really unfortunate it got so difficult. So those were some of my thoughts on how to avoid that in the future, is to just make it really clear to those development people that these are the rules and you need to follow them. I mean, it's not because that neighborhood is so diverse, they're not prescriptive down to every detail. They can't be, but they are very important for preserving the integrity of the whole area. So I was just trying to figure out how we can avoid that kind of difficult situation again.
If I may, Commissioner Westheimer, I think the last time we did a training for the Northern Arizona Realtors was early 2022. So it's been about at least 18 months. But Rick Lopez, who's their government affairs director, reaches out regularly, and he's always very interested in having presentations for realtors on these topics. So maybe when we get that's another thing that, like, when we get a new HPO, I could go do that kind of community outreach, but there's a real benefit to waiting and making that a possibility to help introduce a new face so that they know who to call. And, you know, that always kind of generates more relational improvements with communities like our professional communities. So I'd prefer to hold off, but if you feel like there's a need to reach out more urgently, maybe we could do that this winter.
I think it will be a constant need, so I don't know that there's a real hurry, but I think it's going to be constant because realtors, for example, are always new residents. If you've ever noticed that, all these signs are names we've never seen before, or not all, but most of them are new residents. So along that line, I had two other thoughts.
I have one quick one. You want me to throw one out there so you can think? Okay. So one thing I didn't think of that I should probably inform you all of is we've been meeting regularly with the Federal Rail Administration on the Downtown Mile consultation. We did get first round feedbacks on our Phase 3 report that was prepared by WSP, who's our consultant. And they've requested us to provide an area of potential effects that's modified. So right now that's something I'm working on. That's just a report. I'm not going to be, I didn't get it on the agenda because it's kind of hot off the presses, but we've got a new draft area of potential effects, and we've sent it, I think, today to FRA for further review, and hope they will pass it on to SHPO so that we can keep moving on informal consultation and formal consultation that's needed for that project. Of course, we're trying to keep the clearances for the Army Corps of Engineers, Section 106 process for the Rio, and the one for the Downtown Mile, and the one for the Lone Tree, as simple as possible. As Ariana mentioned, SHPO doesn't have a huge staff for the amount of work, and the national infrastructure funding of the last 5 years has certainly increased that workload. So we're trying to make sure it's simple and that it makes sense and that we're not creating duplicative work just because we're working with multiple agencies in the same area and the same timing. So ongoing work for our staff, and hopefully that bought Duffy and Commissioner Westheimer enough time to think of her other ideas.
So one thing I thought of is that the architect and the property owner brought up personal things about their finances, which is none of our business, right? So he's like, I need to feed my family or something. And it's like, we're looking at the building, we're not looking at how you feed your family. It's not our concern. So it would be nice if they understood that that's not how we make decisions. And then the other part is that we approved a project down here on Aspen, and those owners signed a document that was then recorded with the county. I'm not sure what it was, and I'm curious what it was, because in that case of the 15 North Park, I know that that gentleman does not have 3 families, but he wants to have 3 houses. And he does short-term rent to them, which is not our concern. It's legal to do it. But he was sort of putting pressure on us to approve things when really it was, I don't know what his plans are. But if my neighbors down there had to sign something about not making their garage conversion into a short-term rental, I'm curious what document that was, and also he's getting a building permit for 15 North Park. Is he going to be signing the same document? Whatever it was, I don't really know. But their thought was it had to do something to minimize short-term rentals. But I really don't know what document they signed.
So Commissioner Westheimer, there used to be a part of the city zoning code that is, I believe, Michelle, that we took out a little bit ago, correct? The restrictive covenant part for ADUs.
That was part of the changes that went through with the state legislature, yes.
Yeah. So we've long required that covenant that basically said if you can't short-term rent your ADU and rent out your main unit. You can use it as a short-term rental if you live on the property. Is that correct?
Actually, I said that, but I think because we had ours in place, we were allowed to keep that. I think if you didn't, I need to double check.
Yeah.
But I think it was actually because we already had that in place, there were certain things that we were able to continue with.
Yeah.
But we are continually challenged by state legislature on our ability to regulate short-term rentals.
Mm-hmm.
So do you have any idea what the Johnsons were required to sign? It was linked to their building permit, I believe.
They would have had to sign some kind of a covenant. We could look at that.
If you can email us the address, we could provide you an example of what a covenant looks like. But yeah, I'm not sure that is something we've required in the past. It's very specific to ADUs. If you'll recall, 15 North Park wasn't considered an ADU because it's one building.
Correct.
Yeah.
I realize that. I was just thinking that if it was tied to construction to minimize the impact of short-term rentals on our housing situation in Flagstaff, I just wanted to know, because I don't know what that was that they were required to sign.
Yeah, if you'll send the address, we can answer the question of like what were they specifically required to sign, but we could also follow up with an email that explains what's in the code currently. We can ask the zoning code manager to pull some of those details together. It doesn't have to be something necessarily we discuss at a meeting if it's just informational.
I guess my one last thing is that as it is October, we should probably, if we're going to do a end of the year gathering, we should probably talk about that at the next committee meeting, just to, yeah.
Yeah, we usually do a festive walk out of the December meeting and go somewhere together kind of a thing. And if that date doesn't work, we can always pick another date and advertise a quorum. Happy to plan it, just tell us when.
Yeah, so I guess just bring your December calendars to the next meeting so we can find a date.
Yeah, and if you don't come to
Or
the
we can
next
not
meeting, yeah.
want to do that. That's all, no one is interested.
Yeah, you could email of dates that don't work too, anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, just coordinating dates is not necessarily an open meeting issue.
Oh, that's, yeah, okay, good point. All right, anything else?
Yeah, I have one thing. I just wanted to revisit the training offer from the SHPO. I think Duffy's, discussion of the most recent, the Park Street one, that was really a struggle. I think if we did have more training in design review, it might give us more confidence and more things that we felt like we could hang our hat on when we feel uncomfortable. So I guess I would prefer to see that as soon as we could reasonably set it up. I mean, recognizing winter's always a factor, but they keep the roads pretty good. So I guess I would like to see that sooner rather than later, just to help us with some of those difficult ones that come up.
I agree with that because I missed the meeting last time, but I watched it later. That was a really long meeting, and I was almost glad I wasn't here because it was difficult what you guys, the decisions that you had to make and how you went through it. And I often feel ill-prepared, and I think that training sooner rather than later would be good for us right now.
So maybe.
I also would prefer sooner rather than later. And I think that the more informed we are, the more empowered we are, and the more efficient we are and effective in making decisions. It has to do with the character of Flagstaff's historic communities. So it's better that we're informed before we're in a situation like that again.
And I would argue that she could do the training remotely. I would imagine, remote in for that. But I also traveled to Phoenix all throughout the winter, and it works.
All right, great, yeah, we'll reach out again. I say we, Sarah will reach out again. All right, anything else? All right, with that, I will declare this October 16th meeting of the Heritage Preservation Commission in this year, 2024, adjourned at 5:32 p.m.